Testing, Mike. Can you hear me at the back? Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very special PAFI dialogue today. It's a great privilege to welcome Secretary DPIIT, Shri Jain, and Joint Secretary Manmeet Nanda. Special Secretary Mr. Amrit Lal, who looks after the logistics portion, is on his way. He's sort of delayed at another meeting, but will join us soon. We thought in the taking the balance of convenience of our members and the limited time that the officials have, we'll start a little early. I just wanted to introduce by saying that we reached out to Mr. Jain in last month, and he spoke about PAFI and told him, the fact that this is a representation of the policy heads of approximately 100 companies, and please do spend some time telling us about what the big initiatives are, the focus is, because this will be a good place to talk to everybody who's interested and focused on the spaces, the work areas that you do. He readily agreed. Not only did he agree, he said, look, I'll bring other colleagues along, and we had a couple of back and forth. As you know, the remit of DPIIT is quite wide, starting with FDI to single brand retail, e-commerce, the entire range of issues around ease of doing business, cost of doing business, and then some. And so we thought that we should get a wide variety. So as I said, this is a wide range of representatives, including the diplomatic corps here. I also want to recognize the presence of His Excellency, the Ambassador of Denmark, who's here today with us, and Mr. Savan. One of the objectives that we have here for our members was to have a brief presentation. Like you said, we will speak about what the big initiatives of DPIIT. We'll try and focus today mostly on ease of doing business and the logistics piece after Shri Meena comes. And then we will take some questions. So one of the things that PAFI does and sort of believes in is transparent dialogue with the government to increase the engagement in a manner that we can clarify and ask questions and be honest about the issues that our members deal with on behalf of their companies. And these are some of the biggest investors, both Indian and multinational, across all regions and countries. With that, I will, with your permission, if I can request you to make some opening remarks, and then we can go to the Joint Secretary for her brief presentation, and we'll wait for Meena ji to come.
Thank you, Virat ji, Tanmay ji, and all friends from PAFI. This is my first time when I am talking to all of you, but what Mr. Virat had told me about PAFI, I think this association, this can only be a beginning today. Because as I understand, for government to function well, and especially the department where I am in, it is very important to engage with the stakeholders, and you are the most important stakeholders who give us a feedback. And frankly speaking, I personally feel that as a government official, if we don't interact, we won't come to know what is really required to be done in the policy space. Government does the policy, but the real feedback for the policy, what you tell us, feeds into the policy thing. Last few years have been very, very challenging. All of us know, because of pandemic and kind of things which the world has gone through. But India shone out as a bright spot of hope. And I personally feel that did not happen by chance. There is a lot of design into it. There were 4 important things going into this. First, the government was very pragmatic and nimble, taking quick decisions. When the pandemic set in, thereafter, if you look at the government policies, the support was provided where it was really needed, like MSME, poor, and overall scenarios which take care of the macroeconomic factors. And taking it as this challenge as an opportunity, actually the pace of structural reforms was increased. When you start listing the reforms which have been undertaken, you will find that after 2020 the pace has only increased. So that is one factor. Second factor I feel is the most important role was played by industries. They took up the challenge as an opportunity and transformed things overnight. I recall when the pandemic set in, we did not have things like kits, masks, gloves, sanitizers. We were in short supply of everything. And I remember the way things started happening. The day one you tell that we want the PPE kits to be manufactured. Day two we have a person saying that, sir, we can make it, please arrange this cloth for us. Day three you have a person, he says, I can give you this cloth, you arrange this fiber for us. Day four the factory which produces fibers starts supplying. By day 7 we have our own PPE kit. I am sharing this experience from the state. At that point of time I was Additional Chief Secretary Finance of Madhya Pradesh. So within a period of 7 days from the time pandemic set in, we had our own PPE kit manufacturing, and by the time it was 15 days, we were self-sufficient. The capacity increased that fast. And soon India was actually lending a supporting hand to other countries in these materials, and we had become exporters. So this happened because of the real entrepreneurship which our industries have. Third important thing for our rebound is a very positive news has come from the world of startups, which we know our startup story. And fourth, I personally feel, is the resilience of Indian population at large. That is equally important. We know the kind of demonstrations which some of the countries had to face when people went in for lockdown. In our country, not only that lockdown was taken as okay, there is something which needs to be undertaken for the good of the society, but the real altruistic feelings came out. I know at that point of time there was a mass movement of laborers from certain states to other states. Our state was right in the middle, Madhya Pradesh. So we had a whole lot of crisscross movement, and one was amazed to see that people came out in large numbers to feed all the laborers who were moving out. Of course, government did its bit by giving free wheat, but rest of it was done by the society at large. Almost everybody who passed through got a free food at large scale. And people were so supportive of their neighbors. If there is a problem, people would support that. So that actually reflected the true nature of our society. But as I feel that we actually stand out in adversities, we need to get our act together when the times are normal. If we can do that, there is nothing which can stop us. And that is the real challenge for us. Now, on our part, Honorable Prime Minister has already given us a task, major task of looking into the future, thinking in terms of India at 100, that is in 2047 where we would be. And as he says, it is Amrit Kal, next 25 years, the transition from present day to 2047. All those economists who have given the scenario, who give the scenario by 2047, probably we would be the second largest economy or the third largest economy. There is a debate whether it would be India ahead of US or not, because we have a demographic advantage, we have a talent, we have our talent. So we are bound to grow for next 20-25 years at the rate of 8 to 9%, that is the expectation. But the problem is, if we don't get our coordination act together, we may slip even a slip of 1 or 2 percentage points on such a large period, creates huge difference in the result. So therefore, it is the right time for us to sit together and plan in steps like, okay, this is a vision for the next 25 years, but to reach there, because the way things happen, the way technology changes, we can't even imagine what would be the year 2047 like. Think of what was there in 1997. Many of those technologies, many of those products have been completely wiped away. And many of the things which are here today could not have been envisioned in 1997. I mean, that is how the technology, actually now as we say, the generation is changing every 5 years. If you have not updated, you have not kept up yourself updated, you will be irrelevant in 5 years. So keeping that vision in mind, we started building a short and medium term program. So right now we are working at 2047, which is a vision, and 2030, which is a medium term program. And there's a way to go forward. Okay, now my department. What does my department do? I've been here for now about a little more than 8 months. Initially I asked a lot of my colleagues, what does my department do? So what I have understood, because Viratji also spoke about DPIIT as a breadth. So let me try to explain what we do. Industry is a full, suppose this is a universe of the industry. So there are a lot of departments which are very specialized, say steel, mines, electronics, telecom. All these industries are specialized. So you make vertical cuts, so that space goes out. You make a horizontal cut, MSME. So that is a specialization of MSME. Whatever is left, residual, that is DPIIT directly. But in addition to that, the most important role of DPIIT is the common glue behind all this. The common industrial policy, the common things which affect everybody. That is the role of DPIIT, and that is the most crucial role. Because when I look back, I am told there are some 12,000 HSN lines when we look at the products, out of which about 2,400 HSN lines belong to us, which is 20% of the space. But I don't spend even 20% of my time on those work. My time is spent on what? My first priority nowadays is PM Gati Shakti, which my colleague Mr. Meena would join and he'll make a presentation. PM Gati Shakti, since there is a presentation, I will not speak much about it, but that is one of the most remarkable things I think the government has come across. That is going to be transformational. Along with PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan, we are working on logistic policy. Soon we will be coming out with our logistic policy, which is complementary to, one is infrastructure, and whatever else is required for logistic is part of logistic policy. These two things put together, I think that should be a very good news for the business, because we are looking at really making our logistics efficient and easier to use. So we will have a detailed discussion after Mr. Meena comes, so I will not get further into this. My second most important job, which I spend my most time is on, there is a confusion in minds of people, so I will use all three terms and I will share. Again, we have a detailed presentation, I will not spend too much time on that. We started with something known as ease of doing business, then we moved into reduction of compliance burden, then we are talking about decriminalization. So these are the three words which are interrelated. First is the superset, then subset, and then even further subset. Again, my colleague Manmeet would be talking about it, so I will leave it for the time being. Third most important thing where I spend my time on, okay, let's welcome Mr. Meena.
I'm sorry.
So he'll be speaking about PM Gati Shakti, so I have not touched that. Third thing which I spend my time on is startups. Startup is the real growth story of the India, and I personally feel that is the most important thing going forward, because the next 25 years are going to be the years of innovation and knowledge economy, and startups are a natural ally to convert that innovation and knowledge into economy. And India's startup ecosystem is growing very fast. In just a matter of 6 years, we have grown to be the third largest startup ecosystem. Last year we added more unicorns than what China did. Today we add more startups than anybody else in the world. So, and more importantly, this startup ecosystem has actually deepened and widened. What I mean by that, there are more than 50 sectors which have startups. To be precise, last count which was told by my joint secretary to me was 55. 55 different sectors where we have got startups registered. And more than 600 districts have got presence of a startup. We have 743 districts in the country. More than 600 districts have a presence of a startup. So that is widening. We are no more dependent on only 3 major centers, Bangalore, Bombay and New Delhi. They are now, we have gender balance there. Almost 49% of the startups have a women director. Almost more than 50% startups are from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. So that is what I mean by deepening and widening. But I know there are still issues we are still examining. We got actually we just got a booklet made. What are still the policy challenges in the startups space which we need to look at. In addition to that, we try to incentivize investments. So we have whole lot of FDI thing. So today Manmeet would also talk about FDI. So again I will not get into this, but one thing I can share as a broad statement, that over last few years, the way we have opened up, India's FDI policy is one of the most open FDI policies in the world right now. Accepting the PN3 which creates some kind of confusion in the minds of the people, but I think there are certain things which as a country we have to live with, that is important. And the PLI, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, which is the recent kid on the block. We have had 14 PLI schemes, which has been a reasonable success in the sense that the schemes which came in 2020, there the production has already begun, they have already started showing results. The schemes which came recently, there the selection of the partners has happened and people have started investing, and the results would start coming from this financial year, that is the expectation. And in addition to that, we announced our 15th PLI scheme in this budget, that is going to be for the 5G design led scheme. In addition to that, a very important announcement came in the field of IT, that 76,000 crore package for semicon, because that is one thing which we felt that we need to really work on if we really want to become a big manufacturing powerhouse, and that is of most interest to companies like yours. And if we get that, we will have the full ecosystem. And one of the PLIs for MNRE is actually right from polysilica to the solar cell, will have everything under that PLI. So this is a huge space. So this is a broad introduction, but for today, in discussion with the team of PAFI, we have decided to concentrate on PM Gati Shakti, because that is something which is still not really very well known to people in the private sector, and it is still a work in progress. For government, it is reasonably set, but we are taking it deeper to the states. We expect that all states should get onboarded and should start utilizing this facility, the National Master Plan. And then at some point of time, hopefully within this year, within this financial year, we will open it to private sector for utilizing this. Right now we are in process of consultation that what precautions do we need to take, because there is a lot of sensitive data there, so everything can't be shared. So how do we create a protocol, what can be shared with the private sector, and then private sector can also start utilizing this innovative tool. That is one area of focus today. Second is ease of doing business and FDI, but in the end we will be ready to take any question. You are free, but these are the two experts I have got with me, so that should be the area of focus. But I would also like to listen to you. It is just not a question of we say something and you ask questions and we give answers. Today's interaction, I would like it to be more involved in a dialogue. We would like to listen what we can take back for our own understanding. As I started with this, we are partners to ensure India's progress. So we would like to listen to your voices also, understand what industry feels. Together, how can we make India grow to be a manufacturing champion, because that is a job, as I talk now right now as an industry secretary, but as a secretary of government in general, how do we take our economy to the next level very fast, as fast as possible, keeping equity in mind. It cannot happen that your Gini index becomes more and more skewed. We need to ensure that the progress reaches to the common citizen. That is what we want. Thank you.
So thank you for that broad understanding of what GPIT does. Very helpful. Thank you also for choosing the two very important subjects. Welcome, Shimina. Thank you for being with us today. I'm going to go straight away to our guest here, if you would like to go to the panel. While she walks up, the industry knows Ms. Nanda really well. She works with us very frequently, comes on VCs, listens to us with great patience, and deals with some very, very difficult and important issues around EODB relentlessly. And that's what we're going to discuss today. So, Nanda, please take it away.
A very good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Thank you, Secretary Sir, for laying down the context for this conversation, and to all the partners in India's growth story. So this slide basically talks about the story that Secretary Sir was mentioning. And people-centric governance and good governance has been the focus of this government from 2014 onwards, guided with this principle that made our rank move on. And the last published report of the World Bank of 2019 made us stand at that rank that we see in our slide before. And it was guided by this principle of minimum government and maximum governance. However, you were aware that the effort of the government to improve in India's rank in the World Bank's Doing Business report relates primarily to two cities of India, that is Delhi and Bombay. And the government of India took this mandate of the World Bank and took it forward and endeavored to attain the ease of doing business all across the entire country. The states and the UT administrations enthusiastically participate in this exercise, and this is the exercise that we call as the Business Reform Action Plan. And the Business Reform Action Plan covers maybe about 300 reforms across various sectors and subsectors, and they relate to, say, state single window systems, online building permissions, digitization of land records, inspection reforms, etc., implemented at the states, some implemented even at the district level. And then the states and the UTs are also ranked, and there's a lot of healthy competition that has helped to improve the reform landscape of our country, tremendously, in fact. The quote from our Honorable Prime Minister's speech on Independence Day basically talks about the role of minimum government and maximum governance. Taking an example of self-certification instead of notarization of document was one of the first initiatives undertaken by the government. And the basic focus of the government is to reduce compliance burden not only for its citizens, for each government entity, for its business partners, and to ensure that the government to citizen interface is hassle-free. So self-certification was a big step. I can imagine how many young students have benefited, or each one of us as citizens have benefited from this very simple step that the government took. Next, what Sir was talking about, the superset and then various subsets, came the reduction of compliance burden. It was seen that this was the natural step in the reform agenda, making differences in lives of people and businesses so that there is further economic growth, there is further employment generation and wealth creation. And the objective of this entire exercise was to ensure that businesses do not go through cumbersome processes to get clearances, to get their dues. The pain points of industries was tried to be identified. There were intensive stakeholder consultations that were done at the state level. Many of us in this room have interacted with many colleagues of ours across different state governments, across different industry associations, to identify where exactly one can reduce some compliances which were completely unnecessary, maybe duplicate, made a lot of processes to be made online, digitized, etc., and using of technology wherein we can do so as to reduce the minimum interface and reduce the requirement of businesses like you to come across to different government departments and take your clearances. This is the picture that we have so far. More than about 32,000 compliances have either been digitized, minimized, done away with, brought online. Number of clearances and maybe requirements of processes or procedures have been brought down. This is just the tip of the iceberg. It is also something that we are aware that there is a requirement for greater ease to be brought about. There is a requirement for easier registration, speedier dispersal of grievances, etc. And we have taken this exercise even further. So what the government is as of now doing is taking it on and calling it the process of reducing compliance burden with greater focus on decriminalization. And the slide ahead of us talks exactly about that, of why we feel that there were many acts or laws which were just lost their relevance in our country today. There is a requirement to move into a more in a ecosystem which is not penalizing, and an ecosystem that works together in hand. And these are the various steps and the mission and the requirement of this regulatory compliance burden process 2.0, which is being undertaken as we speak today. A lot of work has already been taken place. I will just mention a couple of important reforms or decriminalization that has undergone. Under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, 46 penal provisions of the Companies Act which were for minor and procedural offences were decriminalized. For example, non-compliances of the corporate social responsibility provisions. It has been classified now as a civil offence and not as a crime. A number of LLP Partnership Act were amended. 12 offences were decriminalized there. Number of state governments have also undertaken a lot of work in this regard. As we all know, the 4 labor codes that have been brought into place, the first step have been brought into place. They are in the process of being undertaken and adapted by different state governments. But just to mention a point here, that many states like Gujarat and others have provided a compounding option under the labor laws for minor offences, etc. And there is a lot of work being done already. And this is a major reform step that the government had taken. Then I come on to the national single window, which is again a very, very important step taken by the government of India. It was soft launched in September 2021, and as of today, it has about 17,000 plus registered users, and about 21 lakh plus visitors have already seen the website. The portal hosts approvals from about 32 ministries and departments in 16 states and UTs as of today. And we hope that the portal will genuinely be a national single window system, eliminating the entire need for the investors to visit multiple portals across several departments and ministries and state governments. We view the portal to finally be seen as a one-stop shop that will eliminate information asymmetry, providing guidance on approvals, and the portal will facilitate for applications of these approvals and also get real-time status of these approvals on the dashboard. This is how the portal is actually as of today, and we hope that with our efforts and the usage of the information that an applicant will put into it forward, we'll be able to use it and customize it for different central government department portals or the state government portals as they would want that information to be seen, so that there is a combination and a unition of all requirements on a single window. And the portal will soon bring in all renewals and efforts which are online right now, and we would see and we hope and target to onboard all states and UTs and departments by March 2023. These are some of the iconic reforms that we have undertaken. This is about Now, this slide talks basically about the FDI reforms. Like Sir was mentioning, Indian FDI policy makes India probably one of the most attractive FDI destinations in the world today. And it is far investor friendly and barring very few sectors. Sectors like lottery, gambling, chit funds, trading in TDR, cigar or tobacco substitute, atomic energy, railway operations, just to mention a few. All the other sectors are 100% permitted, many of them in the automatic route, and maybe some just through government approval. And there is the fact that there has been the simplification of the approval process of foreign investment with the abolition of the FIPB board, and then FDI approvals came in. Different administrative ministries are in charge of their proposals. With the revamping of the FIFP portal or the Foreign Investment Facilitation portal, we have seen a lot of FDI coming into the country. A lot of FDI proposals have been viewed, disposed of, and we can only, the numbers basically speak for us. We can see a sharp increase and a steady growth in the amount of FDI coming into the country. And in spite of the geopolitical scenario globally and in spite of COVID situation, we have received FDI, which is the maximum compared to the last couple of years, from the maximum number of countries, about 101 countries, in about 55 plus sectors. And the 83.57 billion figure is still a provisional figure. So it is something that we should be proud of, but of course, it's not the end of the road there. There is a lot of work to be done, and the ease of doing business is finally the focus is on the ease for all businesses like yours and ease for the final citizen of this country. And we hope that in our partnership, in our conversations with you and the government, we hope to achieve bigger strides in all these sectors for all of us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nanda. This is exactly the kind of work that PAFI wishes to do, which is have the government come in, present on what they're doing, and then engage in inputs. As the Secretary said, that we would like to get inputs. So thank you so much for presenting both on the ease of doing business and on FDI. So would you like to present, or would you speak from here, given the time? Okay, then please, go ahead. Mr. Meena is going to make a presentation on the logistics piece, the PM Gati Shakti, which we've been eagerly awaiting. And I'm informed that the presentation is quite incisive, so it's best to see it. And
has it been loaded?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can look at this.
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Virat. Respected Sri Anurag Jain ji, Secretary DPIIT, esteemed panelists, and dear participants. I'm sorry to be late because I was in PhD CCI function, and because of some unforeseen traffic, it took some time. So I will be talking about PM Gati Shakti. Why PM Gati Shakti? From the point of view of the economic growth, for our manufacturing competitiveness and consumer to get the product on reasonable rates, PM Gati Shakti is an effort towards these two objectives. Manufacturing competitiveness by way of reduction of the costs, cost of transportation, cost of warehousing, cost of inventory, cost of system processes. All this is aimed to be addressed through the PM Gati Shakti. It's a transformative approach to infrastructure development. When I talk of PM Gati Shakti, the National Master Plan, which has been launched by Honorable PM in October, the National Master Plan is aiming towards the infrastructure development. For all 7 infrastructure ministries of Government of India and all the state governments, it's a digital platform. The National Master Plan is a digital platform for proper planning with a view to ensure that there are least disruptions in the progress of the infrastructure projects. In the National Master Plan, the existing infrastructure and also the existing data layer with respect to all the ministries and state government, which is required for the decision making in terms of seeking clearances, has been uploaded. For example, if a road alignment is to be planned, the requirement would be that the agency who is preparing the alignment should know as to where it is crossing the forest areas, where it is crossing the wildlife or habitations or water bodies. So, earlier when this digital platform was not available, it used to involve lot of physical surveys which used to take time, and also the precision element was little lacking. But now when all these data layers are available, the planner beforehand can see the different options. He may think of little diversion, he may think of if the ultimately he has to go through a forest area, then beforehand he is aware of the need for seeking the approval, so that the time available for getting the clearances is much more available. So, that is how it is expected to bring in faster pace of implementation.
Available for circulation?
Oh yes.
Okay, then please don't have to worry taking photographs and notes. He's kindly agreed. We will circulate the presentation to everyone.
Yeah, we have
Please
already shared and
yes,
it's available.
please carry on.
So, it captures the entire existing network of the Ministry of Rail, Road, Port, Telecommunication, all infrastructure ministries, and all the user ministry, all the industrial zones, the entire regulatory data, including the land revenue maps. State governments are being persuaded to place the land revenue, village land revenue maps, so that any planner is aware of as to a particular alignment is passing through which plot and what is the existing land use for that particular plot. There are portals for every ministry and every state government, because data uploading, the responsibility of authentication and regular updation lies with the agency who is the owner of the portal. Say for example, the entire data layer of the road is the responsibility of Ministry of Road, Transport and Highways. They have to upload, they have to update it on timely basis, and wherever there are certain modifications, they are the one who has to do it. So, combination of portals of all the ministries and all the states is the National Master Plan. User can access any set of data. Suppose for industrial park, the state government want to plan as to which is the feasible location in terms of the connectivity, then the user can access the rail, road, port, water availability, power availability, telecom, gas, all these layers can be put onto the platform and an appropriate decision can be taken. Similarly, for a private investor, if he wants to know as to where the gas pipeline is going, where the OFC cable is going, what is the nearest port connectivity infrastructure, the user through this National Digital Master Plan is able to take an informed decision. Many tools as per the need of different departments have been developed by the Bhaskaracharya Institute of Space Applications and Geoinformatics. It's a national institution who has developed this National Master Plan. So, depending on the requirement of the users, new tools can also be developed. Now, suppose a Ministry of Port wants to plan the connectivity infrastructural gaps. So, on this National Master Plan, since the entire rail, road network is visible, they can plan as to what are the gaps. Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways has recently undertaken a complete audit of all the major and non-major functional ports to identify as to what are the critical infrastructural gap projects which, if are taken on priority, can bring in faster movement. So, that exercise on this national master plan has brought useful input on which the Ministry of Road Transport in case of road, Ministry of Railways in case of railway projects, and the state governments for the state PWD roads are in a position to take an informed decision and prioritize their investments. This portal also adds a feature of digital NOC regime. Now, suppose the forest clearance is involved, then the whole process of making application, its verification, seeking comments from different stakeholders, and then its movement from one office to the another office to the state government and then to the central government office, it takes time. But this portal provides for a complete digital tool for NOC regime from different departments. You must have heard of the Sanchar Gati Shakti portal, very recently launched by the Department of Telecom. Now, for the right of way for laying the OFC cable, the Sanchar portal has brought all 36 states /UTs and all the ministries who are responsible for granting NOCs onto a platform. A user has to apply online and then the flow is online. The approvals are also online. Every step is trackable. So, this portal is facilitating to a great deal. It is a dynamic dashboard facility monitoring for the projects. There is a very defined governance framework both at the central level and at the state level. At the central level, empowered group of secretary has been formulated, headed by cabinet secretary with the secretaries of all the infrastructure ministries, all the economic ministries and all the regulatory ministries as the members. There is a network planning group comprising of the heads of the planning of different departments who examine each and every project of the infrastructure from integrated planning point of view, from the synchronized implementation possibility point of view, and also to bring in optimization out of the investment that is proposed. It is supported by a technical support unit drawn from the market who are professionals into different 14 identified fields. Similar structure has been formulated at the state level also. So, for state level clearances and for state level project planning, the same structure is followed. Now, I would like to show you as to how this national master plan looks like. Its home page is user ID password enabled. This provides for the entire set of data, satellite imagery data available. This provides for the ministry wise portal, telecom, road, rail. When I talk of rail, the entire rail network, the dedicated freight corridor network, the land belonging to the Ministry of Railways, all the railway stations, about 50 form of data from Ministry of Railways is mapped onto this. Similarly, road, telecom, all ministries has mapped. More than 600 data layers of different central ministries have been mapped. This portal provides for the tools for decision making. In the left side, if you look at navigation, swipe tool, go no go tool, if a particular alignment is mapped onto the portal and conditions are placed into the portal, it automatically gives to the planner indication whether this is doable or not doable. So, no go report will get generated if there are restrictions. So, these tools have been developed and are being extensively used by different ministries. This is how the portal of the Ministry of Road, Transport and Highways looks like. This is entire state highway and national corridor and economic corridors. Ministry of Road Transport has about 50 different data layers which at click are available to any planner. This is how the railway portal looks like. I have placed very few data layers, but there are more than 40 data layers. Railway line network. This is how the port looks like, western coast, east coast. If we superimpose on the port location the data of railway and road, then the connectivity or the connectivity gap is easy to establish and taken up for the planning. This is how the airport and heliport network looks like, 2014, then 2020, 2024. In fact, PM Gati Shakti has specific targets for different ministries. For all the 8 infrastructure ministries, say for example, road, we had a network of 91,000 kilometer national highways in 2014. By 2025, it is targeted to be increased to 2 lakh kilometer. Already in last 7 years, it's 1.41 lakh kilometer that has been laid, and you must have read the NHAI's achievement yesterday, world record, the fastest, laying of 105 kilometer road. So now the capacities have been built all across. Similar targets are there for telecom, the OFC connectivity. 60 panchayats were connected before 2014. Now 1.7 lakh panchayats are having the OFC connectivity, and in next about a year, all 2.6 lakh panchayats will have the OFC connectivity, and by 2025, all 6 lakh villages will have the OFC connectivity. Same is for the transmission line and so on. So there are laid down targets along with the planning. This is how the transmission lines looks like. This is OFC network, forest layers, solar parks, industrial parks. When we talk of the industrial parks under Industrial Land Bank scheme of DPIIT, all the industrial parks have been mapped, and one is able to track down up to the last plot. One is able to track down as to in which industrial park, which plot is available for allotment. That kind of detail is available on this National Master Plan. So one is able to see the connectivity, the gas, power, all connectivity, availability, and the availability of plot for informed decision making. Also data layers of Ministry of Agriculture in terms of knowledge for the agriculture produce and the raw material availability. This is how the special economic zones are mapped. There are many tools. Through few examples I'll try to explain. Say for example, for the road project, one has to acquire the land. Now in the current framework, the land revenue records are collected from the office of district collector or tehsildar, and then the minimum value of land which is available, compensation outgo is calculated. But this tool provides for the land revenue map of each and every village. If the collector's rate of the land is available, the tool automatically calculates the compensation outgo for each and every plot. It immediately intimates to the revenue authority as to in this alignment which khasra number are, which part of the khasra number are being acquired. So it has given a lot of facilitation. This is how the valuation of the compensation is calculated automatically using the digital master plan. So system and processes has become much accurate and fast. Ministry of Road, Transport and Highways is extensively using this NMP for their new greenfield project planning purposes. These are different tools which have been developed, NOC tools, mark the path as per your requirement, OFC path, you name it, it is possible to develop. Through this example, I'd like to explain the usage of the NMP. The DOT wanted to plan for its 5G rollout strategy for city of Patna. For 5G rollout, the geographical area has to be divided into 200 square meter grids, and there has to be antenna for that. Now the existing antennas have been mapped. The town has been divided into 200 square meter grid areas, and this gives the input to the field formation of the DOT that there are 2333 number of tower in city of Patna, and for coverage of all 200 square meter grids, they need 3098 extra towers to be, extra antennas to be placed onto the street light or wherever. The location is also available to be tracked through this map. So without going into the field, since the entire OFC is mapped, all the towers are mapped, tool develops it into 200 square meter grids, and this gives the result for the planners. So these are many kind of the tools and applications which have been developed by different ministries. All the ministries' regular capacity building exercise is ongoing, all states ongoing. It's in the development phase, and as Secretary Sir has just mentioned, for usage by the private sector, because there are certain sensitive data, so high level committee is looking into that security aspect, and very soon will come out with the protocol, so that anybody who wants to use this national master plan for their investment decision making, they are able to use it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Actually, this is demystifying the PM Gati in ways that we have never seen before. Stunning images of what India looks under each of those sections, and how makes it so much more relevant. I was wrong when I said, would you like to speak from here? Clearly, without the presentation, we would not have had that impact. So thank you for insisting on the presentation. I think our members and delegates here would greatly benefit with this. So you had some points you wanted to write. Did you want to sort of speak about them, or should I just? So we have. Right. So we have about 30-35 minutes. I've persuaded the secretary and the delegation to do speed lunch with us after this. So I'm going to spend as much time as possible for the questions, and that's what he wants to do. So we'll start with that. I have one question, sir, already here on Gati Shakti, which is, how can the private sector contribute and work better? Any ideas on what the private sector could do? Because it's being, part of it is being built by the private sector and this government. Is there a way for them to collaborate better and contribute to the master plan in some manner? What would that be if somebody wanted to approach you or approach the government for that?
Once we have the process in place, I'm sure most of you would know how to use a GIS map. It has got so rich data. It has got, I think, almost about 900 layers. And all kinds of layers like forest, mines. So typically one example which Mr. Meena spoke about. So if you want to plan your own, suppose you have somebody comes up with a industrial township project. You want to set up an industrial park. So setting up, planning that kind of a activity on this kind of a map would be a matter of few hours. We start with a DPR, make a first, then you go to the ground and do the ground truthing. So typically right now when you create a DPR, it takes about 6 months of survey and planning. But with this tool, you can actually do it sitting in a matter of hours on table within the room, and then you go out. Ground truthing may take you 15 days, 20 days, 1 month. So there's a kind of saving we expect at the time of planning a project. Also, this will give visibility, what is going to happen, what kind of infrastructure is going to come in next few years. So accordingly, the decision of the private sectors can be driven. Like what this master plan also does, where we are, typically where we were in 2014, where we are in 2021, and where we would be in 2025, that is a visibility also in addition to these layers which are for planning and visibility tools. So what happens? So for example, roads. We had 90,000 kilometers of road in 2014. We have 140,000 kilometers of roads in 2021. Just in a matter of 7 years, we added more than 50% to the capacity. And 25, we are working, the way the work is going on, in 25 we will have 200,000 kilometers of road. So where those roads are going to be, you would have the visibility now itself. That is a master plan. So you can take your own decisions accordingly. And the SPD, all of you know, today there was a news item. India created a world record some 75 kilometer of road being constructed in just 105 hours. So that is how it goes.
Please go ahead, sir. Just announce your name. We'll get a mic here quickly.
So must compliment you in your initial remarks when you were addressing us and you were explaining the role of DPIIT. Actually, in some semblance, we are all the DPIITs of our all respective organizations. So there is a lot of so compliments, I think, on ease of doing business, the way we have progressed. And I think this, your presence here itself, along with your team and these presentations, is a clear indicator of how the government is reaching out to the industry. And this is the right platform. So thank you for being here as a, from PAFI. I think Virat has already, I'm just endorsing that. So now coming to the ease of doing business, while at the higher level, at the digital, this would tremendously help organization to plan better and also more visibility on the regular, because when a global investor is looking at it, he looks at it from the sustainability point of view, compliance point of view, and also the visibility point of view. Now, when it happens at the ground level, that's where I think the connect needs to be established more, perhaps, where the factory inspectors, that right at the, so I don't want to, you understood what I'm trying to say, sir. So we are with you, things have really changed. And it is just taking a little time for it to trickle down. Perhaps the digitization of it, everything would help us leapfrog as a nation towards that. In the decriminalization of it also is seen as a very big enabler, whether it is legal methodology, and there's so many issues which were archaic. I think those are being totally re-looked at, and compliments to your department for taking the lead there. Also, there are some issues. One point which from PAFI, maybe if I can just make one small,
please, yeah.
Is while we are looking at the ease of doing business and the established laws, perhaps there is also a need for identifying those gray areas and resolving those. There could be some institutional mechanism. That's where the real challenge lies, where the interpretation at the DPIIT level and perhaps at the district level is very different. That's where I think there could be some institutionalized mechanism which could help us address those gray areas on a periodic basis. Thank you so much.
I think most of it was the sort of statement, but still I had just make some reactions to this. Inspector Raj, we all understand what it is. And I recall, since I don't know how many of you would know, but I served with the Prime Minister in Prime Minister's office as Joint Secretary to Prime Minister for about 4 years. This is one of the most important things whenever we are designing a scheme, how to ensure things become more transparent. I am sure all of you are now aware of what has happened in income tax. Faceless, exactly that is the way to move forward. That is a philosophy as far as a government we are concerned. I remember the first brainstorming session had happened. There somebody from the private sector had come, PM had called him, and he had asked all of us joint secretaries to listen to him and then interact and see. I said immediately this idea actually came from a private person. He told us and we immediately said this is the most fantastic thing, we should simply move forward and get it done. It took about couple of years before it got rolled out. Same thing we are trying to work out in almost all our inspectorate. Whenever there is a system being designed, making it faceless, making it random, who would deal with your paper and who would actually go for inspection, to be decided by a centralized portal. That is the way to move forward. Some innovative things, say in case of labor, what had happened? I recall there were 14 acts specifying about 62 forms which a company had to fill up, and most of the information is repetitive. So, at that point of time, since we are finding it a little challenging to go through the process of parliament to change the laws, so we use the technology at that point of time. We created only 5 forms through the portal, and there was a notification by the Ministry of Labour that if you fill up these 5 forms, compliance to these 62 forms across 14 acts would be deemed to have been complied, because on the back end through the technology those 62 forms were getting tick marked. So, that is what we did at that point of time. Now, we have moved a long way from there. All the 4 codes have been enacted. So, there used to be, if I recall, about 41 laws related to labor, 12 have been repealed, 29 have been converted into 4 codes, but still there is no perceptible change at the field level, because the laws under implementation are still the older ones. These codes need to be notified. What is holding us back? Because if we notify the codes, there would be a vacuum in certain states. Each state needs to come out with its draft notification of rules. So, the Department of Labour is pursuing with the state governments, and to my understanding in certain codes about 21 states have published their draft notification, in some 25, some 26. So, it is a process which hopefully would get completed soon, and then the notification will come through. There, if you have this knowledge like today what I shared, you can start putting pressure on those states which have still not done. So, together we can move forward. But I would also like to listen to you from the field, what is the real change in the perception? Has it really gone down, some Inspector Raj, or has it not gone down? You actually did say that the interpretation at our level and at the field level is different. But suppose it was that kind of harassment, if I use the word, was 100 units 8 years from before. Now how much is it? It is still at 100, or has it come down to 10, 25%, or is it at level of 30, 40, 50%? There is a real feedback we would like to listen to, and how do we move forward? But that philosophy what we have done in income tax is going to be across all other these things.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, I'd like to report back that the states are actually undertaking their own consultation now. And we had teams yesterday and this week and last week in Tamil Nadu and in Karnataka, and they're actually quite open to these discussions. So there is intense discussion on with investors on the labor codes and what can be done to suit, and they're also looking at international best practices. So it is making a difference. I think they're going through their own process of consultation, and that is underway. I just want to report that back to you. I have a question here on ease of doing business, which is, can DPIIT engage with central ministries such as the MOEFCC, Urban Development, States, Union Territories, to ensure one nation, one law principle is adhered to for the ease of doing business, especially in the given example of plastic waste management, given that at municipality level the laws get made and then becomes extremely difficult. I think that this is FMCG sector, but I can tell you electronics and many other sectors have the same issue, and I think e-commerce has the same issue. So is that possible to kind of move toward that? Is too ambitious? How do we?
I would say let's also appreciate that we have a federal structure, and you would also understand when we move out with this kind of a view, one nation, one something, there is immediately a backlash, because if you look at it, there are many regional parties which are governing one particular state. They would like to have, there are actually from the intellectuals there are a lot of articles. If you come out with even against GST, people are saying that we have taken away the freedom of the states, you are not a unitary government. There have been editorials on that issue. So you have to be very careful in handling a sensitive subject like this. The point is, if we are able to convince people, it is a question of what is right for the country. If we start convincing people, I am sure people start following what this BRAP done. When Manmeet was making the presentation, she said, she started with this, that when ease of doing business was being measured, it was only in 2 towns as far as World Bank was concerned. But Government of India consciously chose to come out with a model where, okay, Bombay and Delhi got improved, that is one part, but we ensured that the movement was there across the state. So as soon as you create a framework, we created a framework of measuring ease of doing business across states. And I recall in the first series, the 5 states which tied up for the top spot, the first or second series, because so that shows as soon as you make it open, create it as a part of the agenda, people start moving towards it. So same way, as and when a particular question comes out, we make it part of the agenda, things will start moving, and that is what happens every year in BRAP. Like last year, there were about 300 odd questions, out of which if you see some 200 odd questions or maybe 250 odd questions have been addressed by and large in most of the states. So in this year's agenda, most of those questions have gone away. Based on the industry consultation and feedback, new questions have gone in. So that is how you are trying to drive an agenda. So you have something at the Government of India level, then you have at the state level, and truly, of course, ideally it should go down right up to the municipal level. That is absolutely. Another thing which has happened is probably, I hope that's not got lost out, is national single window. She did mention. I would like all of you to actually utilize it and give us a feedback to make it better, because it is still a work in progress. The way we have envisioned this national single window, what we want to do, there are 32 departments in Government of India which are involved in some way or other with some kind of permission for the businesses, and all state governments. So we want to get all these 32 departments and all state governments, so that investor does not have to go onto any other window. One window, and you know your approvals, what approvals you require. That's a very artificial intelligence based software which keeps giving you the output what you want, where you need to apply, what you need to apply, and then all your approvals are routed through this. We want to go to the next step where your renewals will also happen on this. So for investor and businesses, you don't need to move. Actually, when this gets into the full shape, which we hope will happen within a year or two, then you don't need to move to any other portal at all. One portal will be end all for your meeting all your requirements.
Gentleman there, please. Short, introduce yourself in a short question, please, for a short time.
Mr. Bhatia raised, actually this is what we had flagged, and I'm not going to go into the details of it. We can explain that later to you. What has happened is, the government came up with the single-use plastic norms, single-use plastic waste norms under the leadership of the Prime Minister last year. Then the EPR came in. We were all looking forward to a single nation, single law format, and then we started seeing these individual cases of, let's say in a state would ask for truck numbers of all our plastic waste trucks which are picking up plastic waste. There's a municipality which basically went above and beyond the single-use plastic notification, saying that hey, you cannot sell plastic pouches above a certain grade, which is again was not mentioned in the single-use plastic norm which was released by the MoEFCC. The point that we are trying to make is, because DPIIT has visibility of all states and all union territories and even municipalities, if an institutional mechanism can be set up through which, when center sets up a law which is supposed to be following the one nation, one law principle, it should trickle down to the municipality level, to the state government level. If something could be done on that, that will help us a lot.
Absolutely, but the key point is, how do you get the feedback? So institutional mechanism is, I think we have our consultations with all the associations. I think CII, FICCI, SOCHM, we have an annual calendar of interaction. So this has to feed into through, I mean, for every law, if you start creating a separate mechanism, it will be too tough a task. So we have our annual calendar. I think we meet all these associations once in a quarter or once in 6 months. So about 6 interactions we have in a year. So all such feedback should come through them, or otherwise there is nobody stops you to give us the feedback directly. The way we take it up with the Environment Ministry, then Environment Ministry, because based on the feedback. If I recall, last couple of months they have been remarkable by the Ministry of Environment and Forest, the kind of changes they have made, the Parivesh portal, they have done away with so many requirements of environmental clearances. So how does that happen? It is based on the feedback. So point is, more the feedback, more the engagement, better the results would be. And at the same time, everything what industry wants cannot happen, because as a government we have to look at all the stakeholders. You are only one of the stakeholders. So when we sit in a group, I am your representative, but when there are other secretaries who are bringing in other points of views. So finally what gets filtered becomes the law, or gets recommended as a law for the parliament.
Ajay, can I get a mic here?
Sir, the peak of summer and the hall is full, so that's a reflection of the interest PAFI members have in DPIIT.
And summer vacation. Yeah.
And summer vacations. Sir, PAFI aims to align business and society and government with all the stakeholders, and we consider DPIIT as our ambassador, as you said, in the government. And we have seen the way DPIIT is functioning. The national single window was a revelation. The Gati Shakti was a revelation today, and I'm sure you'll get many of our members using these more and more and give you feedback. Sir, I have one suggestion. In fact, a colleague of mine, he's here somewhere, Harish, he has coined the word ease of doing business to pleasure of doing business. We will be working with you and your team, and I'm sure PAFI will put together a series of suggestions for your consideration, state-wise, ministry-wise, what needs to be done, because we are the frontline soldiers who meet and field the government all the time at all the levels. So we'll be happy to work with you and your team on EODB to PODB, as I call it. Sir, one suggestion I have for your consideration, you said you have 4 priorities, maybe you could add 5. 5th one, I have seen the way Team India under your leadership worked last month in Davos, and that's the kind of work, team leadership we needed. Sir, the idea is that we have quarterly release FDI figures, but there is no mechanism to collate, celebrate and release the domestic investments. That itself will mean a lot to a lot of us who are also doing a lot in terms of economic growth. So my request is, let the domestic investments be celebrated, collated on quarter basis, because then you will realize there's a lot of issues involved with domestic investments also. FDI gets red carpet, great. Domestic investment also needs an equal footing treatment like that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ajay ji. First of all, pleasure of doing business, that's a very good word. I personally liked it. Let's see if we can get it. That would be really good. Pardon, Kina? Harish ji ne banaya. Good. On the, there used to be a system, जब licensing होता था, जिसको मैंने last meeting में बोला था हटा दो, रूल एक्ट ही खत्म कर दो, राजीव ठाकुर साहब का. You have some IEM filing system. Okay. That was supposed to track the domestic investment. Then what happened? In '92, we came up with the delicensing thing. There was a huge feedback from the industry that IEM is a compliance burden. So what was it done? You left a lot of people out of IEM. So today I find that the data of IEM, I have actually consciously suppressed that data, because it is too much of under-reporting. Till I joined as Secretary DPIIT, that data was being fed into parliamentary answers. How much investment has taken place? So much of investment has taken place. Who actually files IEM? Someone who needs a state government subsidy. Most of the state governments take IEM filing as I think Part B closure as the proof of your commerce COD. I said, these are the only people who are filing this. Someone who is not going after the subsidy of the state government is not filing. Then MSMEs are out of it, lot of sectors are out of it, then that's not a reflection. And if I make a statement, say X investment has taken place, but in reality it is 2X or 3X, then X is actually very pessimistic. So I have started saying we don't compile this figure. And we are looking at the system of how to revamp the system, where my first take in the discussion was we should do away with this system because it's a compliance burden. So I would welcome if you come out with a thought process how to capture it. because if we create any system, it will be a additional compliance also. We have to remember this. So if we can capture, but to my understanding, we already have couple of systems to help the investors. There are two things. One is celebration, giving a positive news. So if business feels that by creating a system where we can make an online system, every investment to be reported on a quarterly basis, but if a person does not report, then what happens? So think of the overall view, give us a feedback. But to help an investor, what we have, one thing I have talked about the national single window system. In addition to that, I would also like to bring to your notice, when Mr. Meena was talking about, he just mentioned in passing about one portal called PMG portal. PMG portal is project monitoring portal. Initially it was created to monitor the Government of India projects. 500 crore plus projects are all logged on to that. Any problem with that project people can raise their issues. And incidentally, we have allowed the private projects also to be, any investor who has got a project where the investment is more than 500 crore can log on to PMG portal and give the data, raise issues. The portal seamlessly takes your issue to the concerned person, and then there are frequent meetings. Actually, Mr. Meena looks after that also, and if issues don't get, he actually has a very tough schedule. He has a meeting with all 36 states as UTs over a period of 1 month. Every week, every quarter. So he has divided them into a group. Every week he devotes 1 or 2 days reviewing this, and he takes up those issues. This is a list of outstanding issues, what you are doing. So on behalf of all the projects, of course, most of the projects till now are Government of India projects where we are pushing, but state government projects are also there, and private sector also, large projects are there, and we are there to facilitate that. And there is already that portal on which you can pose your problems.
Going to go to the Ambassador, Excellency, please go ahead. Some mic here.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I'm always optimistic, but my degree of optimism has really increased after seeing what you're doing, and I know it from our companies, so I would like to praise all of you. I think it's great also on the logistics, ease of doing business. But it's like a marriage. I mean, we are all having great expectations, and the ceremonies are over, and then daily life is kicking in. When we have many companies, we have 180 Danish companies operating here in India, and they use all your fantastic schemes, and it's fantastic. But then daily life is kicking in, and there we will benefit from you, and we have already done that. But I think if you can have a mechanism that is much more like a one-stop kind of mechanism, where we can have your line ministries taking care of you, because there are so many issues, whether it's the Ministry of Environment or Maritime and ports and all that. So if we could have a mechanism along the same lines here where the daily life problems can be handled. There are lots of them. So it's not just about engaging, having a nice ceremony, it's also about having the family life to really to blossom. And there are a lot of issues. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very good suggestion, but we'll take up with the concerned. I'm sure because the philosophy of the government is same, we should actually get a look at the mechanism which other line ministries are also doing. Maybe that will reduce our work also. Right now we become the postman. You give us to us, we take it with them. It will become a direct feed.
No, we're at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to turn to my last question, then we'll break for lunch. Manmichi, I'm going to ask you, since you're on a daily basis, we see you in meetings, in VCs, in your office, grappling with investor issues on ease of doing business. And we've, the electronics industry has dealt with you, and we've submitted a report, as you're aware, and you swiftly acted to put together a committee that's now working on that, and the 15th August deadline to try and resolve some of these. What would be your advice is the best way for the industry to submit and approach you for the ease of doing business issues? Like, what would be the most effective manner, the most efficient manner in which the industry can structure this so that you are able to process them and sort of move with how can we help you to sort of do this faster, better, would help. Sort of, this is the group that is sort of 70% of what you will get. So I thought we'll take your insight.
So today I interacted with, am I audible?
Yeah, we can raise the.
So today I interacted with several members. There are two ways in which we can take this forward.
Yeah.
Hello. Today I interacted with a couple of people.
Can you hear her in the back?
Waiting for secretary, sir.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Yeah. So there are two ways in which we can take this forward. Many of your partners are already having various industry associations among themselves. I have sat recently with the Medical Devices Association. We have had your report. The report was very beautifully written. It's formatted well. So it gives us issues ministry-wise. We would also want issues state-wise, because like a gentleman from HLL probably mentioned about environment issues, which are different for different state governments. Sir was mentioning the federal structure, then the municipality have different laws. So we would want it to be given to us in terms of which state governments you face the issues, which ministry, department, and that is one forum in which we can then invite and have a tripartite meetings with the concerned ministries, state governments, and us and the association. The other one which we undertake for most US companies, so we've started the fast track mechanism, where many of you had also attended last week, where we take up your issues with the ministries. We invite representatives from the different ministries. We share your issues with them beforehand, so that they have done and taken some action, and they can report that to us. So those kind of issues are something that the Excellency mentioned about Danish companies, is also something that we can take this conversation in a more meaningful manner.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We will, the report that Mr. Nanda spoke about, we will circulate through PAFI. And I think PAFI can also work on a document in this organized fashion, which is states, ministries, urgency. Actually, that report was guided by something that Secretary had told me once, which is, he said that please also indicate which of these issues impact existing, new, or both investors. And we kind of incorporated that. We're happy to circulate that if that sort of forms some sort of a model. Mr. Meena, anything last minute so you would like to say, any last comment before we, I think you have a lapel mic, so that should work. It's on.
One thing, if a small group from PAFI
Yeah.
can look at the National Master Plan and give their views. That's one. Second, for logistics ease, government has planned to integrate all the digital systems through Unified Logistic Interface Platform ULIP, wherein all 27 digital system of 6 ministries are being brought onto a common platform and is proposed to be made available for the users. So on both these, if a smaller group of 10, 15 or maybe 20 people can discuss about both these initiatives for having the user feedback, maybe that will help us to further improve it.
Absolutely. I already have volunteers indicating and raising their hands, so we will do that. There are others who have come in. We will form a group immediately and come back to you. So thank you so much. I'd like to end this session. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Please join us for lunch. Also, there is a survey that is sort of going to be laid out. This is about the profession itself. How do we do this? How do we do it better? You know, what you do, and I think sort of then, and I'm going to run to the vote of thanks to the Vice President, Mr. Tanmoy Chakra.
I don't want to stand between lunch. It's been a tremendously fascinating session. I just wanted to thank Anurag Jain ji, who have had the privilege of working since 2007, I think, in Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal. He is a very unique gentleman who's served as Principal Secretary to a Chief Minister of a state, as well as served as Joint Secretary in the Prime Minister's office. So he has the both micro, macro view. It's indeed a pleasure to work with him continuously. Thank you, Manmeet ji, for your EODB update. It was indeed very, very impressive the way we are rising the ranks, globally competitive, and most importantly, you have now spread this across the whole country and not just confined itself to Delhi and Bombay, to Minaji. Absolutely fascinating, where finally we are seeing evidence of the fact that even though government is ministerially bifurcated in silos, the use of technology is actually binding the government together, which is a very significant transformation, I would say, is the single source of truth. Everybody refers to it, everybody participates in logging into it, and there is a very transparent way of problem resolution. I think that's the real benefit of availing technology. In my TCS days, that's what I would do for a living for 14 years of my life, where I worked with governments in state and central governments to transform G2C, G2B interactions. I want to thank all of you who have come, weathering the 44 degrees outside and the summer vacations and the office work to attend this session. I think all of us are carrying back a clear message. And the word that I want to highlight here is what Anurag ji used, is partnership. I think that's the most significant transformation that I take away from this session, where the government is really now seeking and reaching out and talking about dialogue, discussion, feedback, inputs for further improvement and change. And I think all these are extremely significant elements to building the new India that we all are working together to build in the near future. So thank you once again. Just a housekeeping announcement for those of you who have collected a form outside. There's a survey, 5 minutes of your time to fill it up. If you can fill it up and submit it there. Thank you. On behalf of PAFI, I want to thank all participants, the panelists for today's afternoon, and please enjoy the lunch, which is served right out there. I want to finally end by thanking our President Virat and Apple for making this afternoon happen for us. Thank you very much, Virat.